didn't do it for money.
Right.
I didn't do it for the fame. I didn't do it for recognition.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it was so uncomfortable to come to these things and be recognized. In my opinion, there's no movie, there's no crops, there's no bushel of corn to sort of put to market. There's no film to screen, and we can have a Q&A about it after the fact and talk about what we just saw. This is commerce. And the commerce part of it, the business part of show business, is something that I've never been comfortable with.
Prepare your ears, humans. Happy, Sad, Confused begins now.
Hey guys, it's Josh. Welcome to another edition of Happy, Sad, Confused. Today's main event is Emilio Estevez. A very, very cool one for Happy, Sad, Confused listeners and watchers today. Welcome to the podcast, guys. I want to give you a little bit of backstory and context for this one because it's a cool story. First up, if you hear some drilling in the background, I'm living in hell. There's massive construction outside my window. I apologize. I don't know what to do. The bottom line is I need to record an intro, so we're just going to make it work, right, guys? All right. So I'm just back from Chicago. I was a host for a number of events at C2E2. This is a fantastic event from the folks that make New York Comic Con. They invited me out there for the first time, where I hosted panels with the cast of RoboCop, Once Upon a Time, John Boyega, which will be a podcast episode we're airing very soon here, and a 40th anniversary gathering of the Breakfast Club. That conversation lives elsewhere online. If you just Google Breakfast Club Reunion, you will find it in its entirety. You can enjoy it at your leisure. It was a really amazing opportunity. And the way it all happened is kind of fascinating. I was asked to moderate a bunch of things. Initially, this was going to be a conversation with most of the cast, but not Emilio Estevez, which was not surprising. Emilio, if you know anything about the Breakfast Club, has avoided doing reunions, hasn't done one reunion, one photo op, one appearance at the Oscars, nothing for 40 years. Somewhere along the line, I was told through intermediaries that not only was Emilio now interested in finally attending and participating, but that he wanted to come on the podcast too, that this was in fact part of his interest. He wanted to come because it was in Chicago, because it was the 40th anniversary, because apparently he's a fan of the podcast, which is very amazing and humbling to hear, and that he wanted to come on and just have a long chat about everything that's going on in his career and some exciting upcoming opportunities. So, wow. That was amazing that it all lined up that way. And like I said, the video is out there. It's been seen a lot. The photos are everywhere. It was a really emotional, special moment to have Emilio part of it and to have 1,200 folks in that theater just embrace him and the entire cast. So, wow. I know, still processing that event, and I will be for a long, long time. As for the one-on-one with Emilio, we taped that the next day at C2E2 with, again, some noise issues. We were kind of in the middle of the convention center, so apologies if you hear some other stuff. But this was a pretty cool, not random, but rare treat to sit down with Emilio and have an extended career conversation. He doesn't do a lot of this, and he was so open, so fantastic, talking about his beginnings, obviously the son of Martin Sheen and growing up on sets, amazing stories of being on the set of Apocalypse Now, to his kind of heyday, in the 80s and 90s as an actor in the middle of that Brat Pack era. And then, his directing efforts and now where he's at now, which is this really interesting point, and you'll hear it from Emilio himself in a second, where he's kind of now reconciled with those roles that once he maybe resented is too strong a word, but certainly shied away from and certainly didn't embrace. Whether it's Young Guns or Maximum Overdrive or even The Mighty Ducks. I was really fascinated to see where he's at in his career right now, where he's kind of making those early roles that he kind of ran away from at a certain point work for him. Headline here, and it'll probably, hopefully, folks will pick up on this, is the third Young Guns movie is real. He has a script. He has a cast coming together. He has returning cast members that he talks about in this conversation. This is certainly the most extensively he's talked about the Young Guns sequel that he is going to direct. That's awesome. But he also talks about two other scripts that I had not heard about. I don't think it has been reported anywhere for other sequels to old Emilio Estevez films. So, this was, yeah, kind of a pinch me moment. You know, I grew up with Emilio Estevez and his films, and I respect him so much as an artist, as a filmmaker, as an actor, as a human being, following in the footsteps of his social activist father, Martin. A real treat. A real treat. Before we get to the Emilio conversation, as always, if you want to get early access bonus materials, we have a cool special video diary that we're putting together, maybe up by now, from C2E2, including a little cameo from our very own Sam Hewen, that we're going to put up just for the Patreon folks. Patreon.com/happysadconfused. There's merch, there's discount codes, lots of live events coming up, some really cool stuff in the next, in May that we're about to announce. So stay tuned. And I've rambled on long enough, but I did want to give you guys a little context because this was an unusual one and a special one for a variety of reasons. So without any further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Emilio Estevez.
All right, shall we shove off?
Yes, indeed.
All right,
Yeah.
Emilio Estevez, welcome to Happy Sad Confused,
Thank you,
man.
man. Thank
It's
you.
good to see
Nice
you,
to
buddy.
see you. Nice to see you, and nice to be here. Thank you.
Look, this is an unusual circumstance.
Right.
I mean, usually sometimes, you know, I'm seeing folks back in New York over
Right.
Zoom.
Right.
We're in an odd, kind of amazing place. We're at C2E2 in Chicago.
Indeed.
I just want to give some context to this because yesterday,
Right.
the Breakfast Club reunited for the first time
Right.
in 40 years. How did you get here? Tell me the backstory because this is a kind of
Kicking
amazing.
and screaming. And that's the only, I mean, it's kicking and screaming. This is something that has really, something that to use the word avoid is not, I don't think the correct word to use. It just hasn't been top of mind.
Yeah.
I've famously rejected reunions, whether it was a Repo Man reunion or an Outsiders reunion or St. Elmo's, or, I mean, I've been very blessed to be part of these amazing ensembles for films that have sort of transcended generations. And it's a blessing on one hand, but then it's like, okay, the movie had an impact,
Yeah.
and it continues to, so therefore there must be a reunion. And so over the years they said, well, why doesn't Emilio show up? Where is he? Why is he the holdout? Molly at one point called me, he's the Greta Garbo of the group, and he just refuses to participate. And then, like we talked about in the panel, I heard earlier this year that through a mutual friend, that she said, does he just not like us? I thought,
Then it gets
come on,
personal.
man.
Wait, no.
Exactly. And I thought, come on, man, that's not it at all. It's just
Yeah.
not my thing. It never has been. And so I thought, if I was ever going to do it,
Yeah.
and as I said on the panel yesterday, is that if I was ever going to do it, it would be this.
Yeah,
It would be
Chicago.
here. It would be Chicago.
It's a
the
good
40
year, yeah.
And with you, frankly, because it's not. You're a true cinephile, and I knew that the questions you would ask, and in terms of being a well-prepared moderator, would be would carry a certain weight that maybe others wouldn't.
Appreciate that.
And I knew you wouldn't take the moment for granted.
Right.
And so
Goosebumps. I still have it, just talking about it
Right
now.
on.
And we were
Right on.
talking yesterday. I mean, like, you know, this builds up, this anticipation over years.
Yeah.
And you were nervous, and then in
Yeah.
the moment, it's overwhelming. It is.
Yeah.
You walk into that room, 1,200 people, all have this deep connection with you.
Yeah.
How did it feel to be in
I
that
got very
building?
emotional.
Yeah.
I didn't anticipate that I would tear up in the way that I did. And then I was like, please don't let Josh ask me the first question because I'm just going to start crying. And I thought, okay, good. He went to Judd, he went to Molly. And I was like, I got a minute now to sort of recompose myself.
Yeah.
But it was overwhelming. And to see Michael and to see Molly, who I haven't really seen, I'm going to say in over 35 years,
Oh my God.
if not longer. Judd and I have stayed in touch over the years. Ali and I have as well, but for the most part, we haven't been in the same room, in the same space for many years.
So I don't necessarily expect you to suddenly start doing 1,000 conventions, but hopefully it does reignite these relationships in some way. I mean, that could be a nice blessing.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, you know, we are talking about a St. Elmo's Fire sequel. They hired Sony Pictures. They're fast tracking it. They've hired Stuart Lumberg, who wrote
Right.
The Kids Are All Right, a frequent collaborator with Lisa Cholodenko,
Yes.
who directed Alley and High Art.
Right.
So Stuart's writing the screenplay. We'll see what happens. I know Rob is keen on it. He's very
been
quick to
talking
talk
openly
about
about
it.
it, yeah.
Every time he gets on a red carpet, Rob talks about.
I think
St. Elmo's
Denise
Fire.
said that
Denise
she's
talked
down
about
for it. Yeah.
We're talking about it now, but it will really depend on the script. But I know the studio's keen on it.
Crazy.
So, I know. We've talked about the storyline. It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's very big chili, which is not, would probably not be a surprise to anyone.
Yeah.
But I think it's. Listen, we'll see.
It's gonna be a challenge to find the right filmmaker too to actually direct.
Right. I know Will Gluck is producing.
Oh.
But here's an interesting thing too. We talk about conventions and getting me to them. When Ange Giannetti, the studio executive at Sony, reached out to Lauren Shuler-Donna, the original producer on the film, Lauren said, "You will never get Emilio.
You have this aura about you now.
You will never get Emilio. He will never show up for this." And Ange said, "We'll see." And then I got a call from Ange. She said, "Do you want to have lunch?" I said, "Sure." So maybe it's just a part of my maturation, sort of letting things go.
Right.
Because, I think, and again, I've said this in the past, I've always wanted to look and move forward. I've always never wanted to look in my rearview mirror and talk about what I've done. If you walk into my house, you don't know what I do for a living.
Right.
Because there's no movie posters, there's no memorabilia, there's nothing. I celebrate other artists,
Yeah.
just not myself.
Well,
And that's kind of how I'm wired.
I get it.
Right.
And look, I mean, you've had an unusual life and career where, like, you have been defined by a lot of work early in your career, and
That's right.
And you've made a real point of establishing your true artistic life. If I were to assess it, is your directing work, I would imagine.
Right.
That's the
It is.
personal stuff,
It
of
is.
course.
It is.
But for a young man to be defined by the first 5 or 10 years of films that just happen to come their way that you don't even
right.
have a choice in,
That's
is
right.
a burden as much as a blessing.
Without a question. It is, like we were talking about yesterday, the movies pick you. You don't pick the movies.
Yeah.
And there are 200 auditions that you go to before you get into the list of the final 3.
Yeah.
And then you're the guy. And you understand how it works the longer the process goes. I was very fortunate to be in The Outsiders and Breakfast Club and St. Elmo's Fire, all ensembles.
Yeah.
And people assume that it was a choice. Well, it wasn't. But to your question, I grew up on some really extraordinary film sets.
Yes.
I mean, starting at 6 years old, I'm on the set of Catch-22, directed by Mike Nichols in Mexico, and the cast is Alan Arkin and Orson Welles and Martin Balsam and John Voight and Art Garfunkel and Martin Sheen. And so, there you are, and as a boy watching this, admittedly not a great movie, but still.
But curiosity, to say the least.
Coming right off of The Graduate, so Mike Nichols was
peak
right,
of his
so
powers.
there you are, and
yeah.
I was old enough to recognize where I was. Then 4 years later, Terrence Malick in Badlands. And then 4 years later, Apocalypse Now. 6 months in the Philippines watching Francis Coppola direct that film, which was just historic to
Can I
be
ask-
on that set. And then
Yeah.
4 years later, I'm on the set of Richard Attenborough's Gandhi, where the call sheet says, 10 million people. I mean, not close.
Yeah. Back in the
10
day when
million
you couldn't
extras, when you
digitally
couldn't
add
do
them.
it.
Yeah,
Exactly. So as a young, aspiring storyteller, because I couldn't call myself an actor, I couldn't certainly call myself a filmmaker, but I was taking in all of this data,
Yeah.
and the data was epic. And so I've always looked at whatever I do, even if I have a dime to spend
Yeah.
on my movies, which is often the case, I always look at the story as epic.
Right.
Because I see the world in an epic proportion, and I can't not see the world that way, and not just how I live my life, but just how I see every story.
Yeah.
So that is kind of how that's informed me as a filmmaker.
Right.
And so it is often a burden, because I want to shoot something. I think we were talking about yesterday. It's like, I want to shoot in 235, and they'll say, well, it's a movie about 4 people in a house,
right.
like The War at Home.
Right.
And I said, yeah, but I want to shoot in 235, right? I want that sort of, even if it's interior, I want that sort of bendy look as we're coming around, from one room to the next, and it's just, I want that epic look to the film, even though it's an intimate movie.
Right.
Bobby was the same thing, and yet the way we shot Super 16,
right,
almost all handheld and Steadicam across 500 miles of Spain. It was, anyway, but still, the shots in the way are, are not. They still have that sort of epic look
and intentionality about it. Yeah, I mean, I have to hit upon a couple of the experiences you've mentioned, because like the opportunity to be on the set. You were a teenager when you were on the set of Apocalypse.
14 years old. So it was me, Gio Coppola, who was also 14,
right,
and Lawrence Fishburne,
right,
who was also 14, playing 17. We were kids. We were young boys who were just sort of figuring out life, not going to school. We were like, our school was a film set.
How aware were you of what your dad was going through? I mean, your dad, obviously, it's on film. Like, we know how
right.
tough a shoot it was, from physically, emotionally,
right.
everything.
Well, in the documentary Hearts of Darkness, which I'm sure you've seen, they kind of collapsed time and portrayed his breakdown at sort of towards the end of the schedule, when in fact it was early in the schedule. My dad was celebrating his birthday, so it was August 3rd, and we had come. I had gotten there in July of '76, so that was 76 July or 76 August. He has this meltdown on set because he was celebrating his birthday and he was drinking, and Francis had him isolated in his room, and I was there. I watched it happen, and I was there when they carted him out, and he was ranting and raging and screaming, and he. And they were shooting in a courthouse. I don't know if anyone's ever heard this story, but my dad, always on the side of social justice.
Of course.
And so we were filming in a building that was used for night court. So it was the upstairs were the apartment where they find him, or the hotel room where they find him and carry him out. Well, they actually did that. We carried him out that night, and night court was happening down. So we came down the stairs, and again, I'd seen my dad drunk before, not on this level, and certainly not this publicly. And he demanded to go into the courtroom, because he says, if I don't go in there, and he's screaming at my mom, I need to go into that courtroom, because if I don't go in there, some poor son of a bitch is gonna go to jail for masturbating in front of a pig. and Francis was like, Martin, no, come on, Martin. It was hilarious. We got him in the car. We started driving, God knows where, just somewhere away from where we could get him calmed down. And he announced to everyone in the car that he had to pee. So we pull over to the side of the road, and he got out and ran naked into the jungle, and kept going. And
we might never have seen him again.
No, and my mom chases him down. She said, Martin, chasing after him. We got him back in the car.
Oh my God.
10 minutes later, I have to pee again. My mom says, Martin, you have cried wolf one too many times. You could piss all over yourself. Anyway, I'm sure they're going to be horrified that I told that story, but it happened, and it's the sort of those are the stories that I don't think anyone has ever heard.
Oh my God! As if you think you've heard every story about Apocalypse Now. There's a new one for you. So in your peer group, when you're starting to make your way as an actor, you obviously changed your name at a certain point.
Well, I didn't change my name. I just kept my name.
Okay.
So Sheen, my dad changed his name in 1958 when he came to New York. Obviously, he looks very Irish.
Yeah.
And he has this name, Ramon Estevez. And he's like, it sounds kind of Puerto Rican, Marty, maybe, or Ramon, maybe you want to change your name. So he did.
Got it.
In 1978, 79, I started going out on auditions. Managers and agents were saying, look, kid, you know, you don't look Latino.
Right.
It's going to be a lot easier if you just use Sheen. It's like, that's not who I am. They said, trust us. So my first headshots, I've actually posted on my Facebook page, Emilio Sheen.
No kidding.
And I looked at it, I thought, that's not me.
Yeah.
That's not who I am. And my father said, don't make the same mistake I did.
Yeah.
This is who you are. He says, it may feel like it's more difficult to go with your birth name, but don't make the same mistake. So I didn't. It was a bit of a hurdle. My agents, my managers did not like it, but I stuck with Estevez. And I was told it would never be a name that you'd see over the title. And I thought, okay, challenge accepted. Challenge accepted.
You won that battle. So, I mean, I would imagine you have an interesting perspective. In recent years, there's been all this talk of like the Nepo baby conversation. I talk to so many young actors who, you know, Jack Quaid and John David Washington, all these amazing talents who bear the burden of this amazing name and the preconceived notions. And you were someone that dealt with all of that too.
Sure.
And you're in this amazing peer group too, we should mention. A lot of them you work with in The Outsiders, you know, whether it's, you know, Sean Penn or Tom Cruise, et cetera.
Right.
Did they feel like you had a leg up? Was there any kind of I don't know, did you feel that weight, that expectation, that jealousy or anything?
The only time I felt like the pressure was when I'd go into audition. I thought, my God, they're expecting a Martin Sheen type of performance as I walk into the room. And you know, I'm a kid. I'm still finding my way. I'm still trying to figure out, you know, who I am and what my skill set is. So for me, it was, I never felt anything other than support by my peers or from my peers. So Sean was a good friend growing up. Tom became a friend through Sean. Rob Lowe was our neighbor. Yeah. So we all knew each other. Downey went to Santa Monica High like the rest of us.
Crazy.
So it was odd to have all of those young, talented people grow up within close proximity to each other, much less go to the same high school.
Yeah.
It just is. I can't really. It's hard to describe.
Yeah, something was in the water there because
something. But again, it was L.A. It was a sort of a melting pot for people coming from all over to try to, you know, make their way in Hollywood. So not unusual. So yeah, it was interesting times.
It's been fun to see like you and Tom like dip into each other's work over the years. You know, he has that small moment in Young Guns.
Young Guns. Well, he showed up on set.
Okay.
And I said, hey man, because he just wanted to visit. I mean, back in the day, you would just do that. You'd sort of say, hey, where are you shooting? I'll come. I'm in Atlanta. I'll come. I'm shooting in New Mexico. I'll show up. And it wasn't other than just to support.
Right.
And that was the great thing when we all really supported each other, which you don't see a whole lot of today. But yeah, he showed up. I said, do you want to get shot in this? I said, sure. He said, yeah, put me in a beard and whatever. And I did the same thing the next day. I was bored. They were shooting. We did the reverse. And we were shooting the cavalry and the bounty hunters shooting at us. I was like, you know what? I'm going to do what Tom did. So I put on a beard and a hat. There's a shot in the movie where I'm shooting at myself as Billy the Kid, or as one of the bounty hunters shooting at Billy the Kid.
Amazing.
That we'd shot the day before. So
should we have the Young Guns conversation now? Because you know, this is being talked about.
5 years in the making. So this started in 2019, and I approached John Fusco, the original writer of both films, and I said, hey John, here's what I'm thinking. And this was prior to the Mighty Ducks Game Changers thing with Disney and all that. I was like, what do you think about this? He said, I think we should investigate. I think we should start. So I just started doing all the research, staying in touch with John. So what about this? What about this? Great.
Can I just backtrack for a second?
Yeah, sure.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Your relationship to those two films, like, did you always have like a particular fondness for them? Was this like an itch that you always wanted to scratch? Because we've talked about like you're kind of like wrestling with nostalgia and wrestling with returning to things. You know, the Mighty Ducks was something you kind of like had to be dragged to kicking and screaming a little bit.
Oh yeah. In both directions,
Right.
in and out.
We'll get to that if we have time. But but why Young Guns? Why did this lure you back that you want to return to this story?
Well, I'm going to say something that'll probably scare you, but playing Billy the Kid, that character is probably the closest I've ever played to anybody who is like me. And not that I'm sociopathic. However, it's probably the most fun I've ever had.
Yeah.
Playing a character. He was so beautifully unhinged.
Yeah.
And from what we know, historically speaking, that is who he was. That he was a prankster, that he was a jokester, that people adored him, but they were also terrified of him because you never knew what direction you were going to get on any given day. And so I just had such an affinity for the character. And over the years, I've become very fond of the desert and the Southwest. And I feel very at home in New Mexico. And again, you raise a really interesting question, and that is, why would you want to go back to something when all you've talked about for the last 20 years is moving forward in this current climate of nostalgia?
Yep.
And if I'm going to get dragged back kicking and screaming, how about I not get dragged
to the stuff you were kind of
kicking or screaming, something that I really enjoyed. Let's figure out a way to reboot this, rediscover it, re-examine it, however you want to frame it. And so I thought, we already teased this idea with Brushy Bill Roberts. I went to Hico, Texas, where Brushy Bill is buried. Spent time in this very small town in central Texas. And there is a compelling argument that he was not killed in Fort Sumner in 1881. There's a very compelling argument that Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid were too good of pals, and Pat let him go. I believe that story. I know there are a lot of historians that cry foul on that, and I'm sure, and that's valid as well. But
sure.
But I think that this take on history, that he lived to be an old man and died in 1950, after going to the governor, Governor Mabry in Santa Fe, had an audience with the governor and stated his case, and then 3 weeks later he was dead. So he didn't get a lot of time for forensics, certainly the forensics that we have now,
sure.
and the investigations to get to where we are now. Just so, since we made the movie, they did a side-by-side comparison with a picture of Brushy Bill and a picture of the kid, the only tintype photo that existed of the kid, and they brought in a New York City forensic, one of those guys that does the deep dive on the feature. So what do you call that?
No, I got you. Facial recognition.
Facial recognition. Thank you.
Yep.
So this guy said, without knowing what he was looking at,
actually went there.
He said, that's the same guy. He says, well, what percentage? He says, 99%. That's the same guy.
So can you give, look, your cameras are not up yet, but you do have locations you're starting to scout, I imagine?
We started scouting locations in January. Then we had the LA fires.
Right.
Raced back for that. Then I just went back a couple weeks ago, met with the governor, secured the tax credit, scouted a bunch of Indian pueblos, which are going to suit our purposes for a lot of the shooting. And we just brought on a casting director, wonderful casting director I work with now, and very respected, probably one of the top 3 casting directors in LA, named Mary Vernew.
Right.
Betty May, you know her.
Yep.
She's amazing, and her team's awesome. And so I just got my cast list the night before I arrived here. So tomorrow morning, I'm going to start going through those and start putting together who I think are our candidates.
So back at Young Guns 2, sadly, between those first 2 films, most everyone was killed off.
That's right. That's right.
But Lou has been talking about it.
Right. Lou returns.
Okay.
Christian Slater returns. We didn't see either of them die on camera.
Okay.
We certainly didn't see Billy the Kid die on camera.
Right.
And if you want to continue the narrative of the Brushy Bill story, there's a potential for 3, 4, and 5. Whether I'm in the next installment or not but I already have an idea for what is, for what 4 is. But
has Bon Jovi been contacted? Is
I'm not allowed to say. That's all I can say.
Would you like to have him contribute in some way?
I'm not allowed to say.
I think you just said something. And with
John has remained a friend,
Yeah.
and he's very enthusiastic about being involved with this. Very enthusiastic.
Now, with all due respect, the title, you're a young man still. You're
Right.
young at heart.
Right.
What's it called?
Young Guns 3.
Okay.
Dead or alive.
Okay.
So it begs the question: is he dead? Is he alive?
Right.
It also tucks into John's song "Wanted Dead or Alive." So there's that little Easter egg. But it does center on a bunch of new regulators, mostly Latino,
Yep.
indigenous people, and it takes place. Most of the film takes place in Mexico.
Yeah.
And it falls on the eve of the Mexican Revolution. So you have a young Pancho Villa who was 28 at the time. You have his group of soldados, true believers and revolutionaries who were all kids.
Yeah.
You had a human trafficking ring going on the border. He was taking kids from the pueblos and consigning them to his army. They were grabbing kids off the orphan train, and there was a whole cabal of people. The Germans were there.
Yeah.
There's so much history that was going on the border, and then of course during the Mexican Revolution, the Germans were funding Pancho Villa. Because the Americans were just they were not interested. They looked down their nose at Mexicanos. So the Germans were providing gold and arms, and they were also spying on America. This was also right a few years before World War I. So all of this is happening south of the border, and Billy the Kid meets Pancho Villa, and he is asked to come along and train his young men. So that's basically the story. So I become the Tunstall character,
Right.
in many ways,
Yeah.
and bring this group of young, mostly Latino, young men through their paces, and then all hell breaks loose. And so the setup is great.
It sounds
the setup
amazing.
is a lot of fun.
I have a long history of talking to actors about these kind of dream legacy projects like Bill and Ted 3. I feel like I was talking to Alex and Keanu for 10 years.
Right.
So I'm hoping we can push this to the finish line, because clearly there's a passion there. Clearly there's a will, there's a way. It's going to happen.
And it's a big Latino cast.
Yeah.
Big indigenous people cast, without feeling like it's. It feels natural.
Yeah,
it doesn't.
of course.
It doesn't feel
Yeah.
like it's. Oh God, they made the woke version of Young Guns.
Yeah.
This is natural. This
Yeah.
is organic to what was happening at the time. And so that's exciting for me.
Well, it's exciting to see you're excited about
right.
it. That's the most important
And
thing, too.
there's so many great
Yeah.
Hispanic, Latino actors right now. You got Anthony Ramos, and you've got this kid from Reservation Dogs. I think we were talking about that yesterday, DeFaro Winnatai.
Yeah.
And so there's this great pool.
Untapped talent that's
guys that
yeah.
are going to be really exciting to see cast in this movie.
All right, I'll be visiting you on set,
It'd
whether
be
you like
amazing.
it or not.
Please, please, be great.
All right, will you indulge me? I'm going to throw out a few random movies from the career. I want to just hear some what do you think of? There's some infamous ones.
Okay.
Maximum Overdrive.
So
Stephen King famously
yes.
has said he was coked out of his mind. He was a madman. Did you know he was having issues?
The only time that became apparent for me, and I don't think Stephen would be mad if I told this story, but I didn't know how bad it was.
Yeah.
There was one day we were shooting, and I was probably from me to the camera, and he had this enormous tumbler that he'd been working his way through the entire shoot, and I never paid any attention to it. It's one of those sort of that the old plastic tumblers that our parents probably had, filled with booze and we didn't know.
Right.
Well, his was too. And being this far away, I actually smelled the booze. I thought, oh no, is that Stephen's cup? What's going on here? And then I saw the film and I thought, well, of course.
Yeah. He was impaired.
He's embarrassed by the film.
Yeah.
He wrote me a letter years later. He says, I hope you're not, I hope you forgive me. In truth, and with the advent of more computer technology and AI and all of that.
Yeah.
I started to imagine what a sequel to Maximum Overdrive would look like. And during the strike, I wrote one.
What?
I know. You would think I wrote.
You were going through something. This is like therapy. This is like.
Josh, I also wrote Mighty Ducks 4.
What?
You can't, because I wanted to make up for all of the disasters that happened on the Game Changer series.
A feature script?
Feature script, yes. that had Coach Bombay coming back, being pulled back in by Josh Jackson's character and Kenan Thompson's character, and to coach a new team, an expansion team for the Professional Women's Hockey League. So it would be an all-girl team. Now, when we discover Bombay, he's coaching roller derby. And so he says, my girls are going with me. He says they have to have a shot. And it was charming and contemporary and cool and again, organically of the moment.
Yeah. So where are we at? What's going on?
It's where we're at. And Disney was like, we don't want to pursue that.
No.
They don't. And the Maximum Overdrive, I don't have the rights to any of this, right?
Right.
These were just sort of, I started page 1, started an idea, and like, now I'm on page 10, I'm on page 20, now it's 50 pages, and I can't stop. Dino De Laurentiis owns the rights to Maximum Overdrive. I created an insane world that takes place in a diner. So Bill, if you remember the movie, and if you do, I'm sorry. It's a terrible movie.
Yeah.
But he was a short order cook. So now in the movie, it opens with, he's got his own diner, he's got a young daughter, he's got his crew, his people, and Guy Fieri is coming to do diners, drive-ins, and dives on the day the world falls apart. And machines turn on. And it was a cool idea. It's a bitchin' script, man. And De Laurentiis was like, nope, we have the rights to this, we're not interested, we're going to pursue our own thing. I was like, okay. So there are two huge opportunities.
These feel like no-brainers. I mean, Disney
Thank you. Can you look at the camera and say that?
I'm on the record. Greenlight these. I mean, a Mighty Ducks sequel drawing you and Joshua in, Disney's leaving money on the table. That's just insane.
I agree. And Kenan, who's arguably the funniest man on television right now, it's like, guys, what are you doing? And we can make all of these movies for a price. Again, I don't get a lot of money to make my films.
Yeah.
I make them on a shoestring. So, to start talking about $25, $30 million, which is still a bargain by industry standards.
Have you written the FREEJACK sequel yet? That's all that's left.
That one I'm actually going to leave alone. I'm going to leave alone.
What happened? Give me the 1-minute version of what the hell happened on FREEJACK.
So Ron Shusett, who had written Total Recall, wrote the script, and Morgan Creek greenlit it, and they brought on Jeff Murphy, who I'd worked with on Young Guns too. And Jeff, God rest him, he passed now, but he had done Quiet Earth, which was a sensation in New Zealand. So he fancied himself a science fiction aficionado.
Yeah.
And they went about to deconstruct the script and took all the action out. They made it more of a character-driven piece, which is, again, in my wheelhouse. I like that. They screened the movie for Morgan Creek, and the head of Morgan Creek, Jim Robinson, says, "Where's all the action? Go back and shoot some action." So we went back to Atlanta, back to New York. Not small. Not a small feat by any stretch of the imagination. We reshoot all this action, we inserted it in the movie, and that was that. However, it was cool to be on set with Anthony Hopkins.
Mick Jagger.
Mick Jagger was like, it's like, hey man, what are we? It's like, come on, let's go go see a band tonight. I was like, of course. I'm not gonna not say yes to Mick Jagger. Go out and see a band. So it was cool for that. Rene Rousseau was amazing. David Johansen. So we had a great cast. And again, we just the best intentions, man.
It's hard to make a great movie, as you well know. It's really hard. Even with all the elements. It's easy to make a bad one. Very easy.
We see it every day, unfortunately. But I think when you get complacent, or when you get sloppy, when you think you know it all, or you think you know what the audience wants, is when you get screwed, because the tastes change. From when you make the movie to when it's released. So I think we really we had something starting out that just went horribly wrong, unfortunately.
how dead on a scale of 1 to 10 is your character from Mission Impossible?
Oh, he's gone. He's gone. No, and that was a great experience.
At that opening 20 minutes is amazing. I mean,
and that's how Tom framed it. He
Yeah.
said, look, we're going to have all these well-known people. It's going to be you, and we're going to kill all of you. I said, that's cool.
And
That
De
is
Palma,
cool.
you had a De Palma experience. Come on.
Yes, and De Palma, pretty dry guy,
Yeah.
pretty humorless guy.
Yeah.
And so I showed up on set every day. Said, how can I make Brian laugh? How can I get that smile?
was the
out of him?
challenge.
How can I do that? And Steve Burham, who I'd worked with on St. Elmo's Fire and The Outsiders, the DP, was shooting Mission Impossible. And here I go from these sort of small, more intimate movies to this enormous potential franchise. Nobody knew at the time, but you could. And De Palma and Burham, and they got all these massive sets, and I think there was one day where they got 11 shots, and they were high-fiving. I thought, 11 shots? I get 11 shots before 9 a.m.
Right.
What are you talking
It's a
about?
different thing.
You're,
Yeah,
11 shots? Come on, man. So it was a great experience.
Yeah.
But for the short time that I was there shooting with Tom and the Mission Impossible crew, I was there a month. Then George Lucas saw the movie. Brian screened it for him, and George says, "Where's your spaghetti scene?" I don't know if you've read about this.
I haven't. Tell
So
me.
he says, "Where's your spaghetti scene?" And De Palma says, "What do you mean?" Just the spaghetti scene where the crew's sitting around, they're eating pasta, and they're all talking about what's going to happen next. We get to know them over spaghetti. It doesn't have to be spaghetti, but that's just sort of
Oh, and that becomes the flashbacks later in the film.
no,
right?
that becomes the opening that
the
was
opening
not
sequence,
there,
which is
where
great.
we all see
Oh,
each other,
of course.
and
Yes,
it's
yes.
the red light, green light,
Yes.
and all that. So we went back to shoot, and I had grown my hair eyes for an indie film that I was going to
Yeah.
call The War at Home.
Right.
And they said, "We need you to come back," and I said, "But I'm growing my hair out, and my hair was buzzed, and we'll put you in a wig," and they did. And if you look closely,
Now I'm going to go back. I've
you
only
can
seen that movie
see-
20 times.
Right.
One more time.
Right. Which is probably why you probably couldn't tell because of the hair thing, the bandana that I used.
There you go.
For the last of it, my last moment on filming that. But they
Oh.
could have brought me back with the masks, right?
course.
I could have been the villain in part.
I'm still holding out hope. The series isn't over yet.
The final one looks insane.
Looks insane.
The trailer's mad.
What they've done with that's as good as you can operate in that realm of filmmaking. They've cracked the code. What they're doing.
Indeed. J.J. Abrams, right? He took it to the next level
Totally.
too, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah.
He just said, "We're gonna."
So, your directing work, which we've alluded to throughout. Look, even during the panel yesterday, it must have been heartening, like in this amazing Breakfast Club moment. I think a couple questions from the audience about the public.
Right. 2 librarians in the audience just stood up and said, "Thank you for making the film." I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, just like the shelf life of these small passion projects. I mean, from Bobby was like calling in every favor friend, selling artwork.
It became the coolest movie in Hollywood to be a part of.
Yeah.
And once Hopkins came on and Macy came on and Sharon Stone was like, how do I be a part of this? Elijah Wood, who was just here at the convention.
But to see the shelf life of these things, The Way has this amazing long tail.
The re-release has been amazing.
Yeah.
We're just now starting to make a little money on it. As the creators of the film, all the money went elsewhere.
Right.
So we're just now starting to pull some of our own, money in on that, which is great.
Did working with your dad in that way? I mean, you've worked with your dad a number of times, but does that change the relationship? Did that experience of working so closely, him in a leading role, directing him?
Well, my dad, it was his idea to make the film,
Yeah.
to make it in Spain. But he had a very clear idea of the movie he wanted to make. He wanted it to be devoutly Catholic, like he is.
Yeah.
And I said, look, man, this movie has to appeal to everyone.
Right.
I can't make a Catholic movie. I'm not a practicing Catholic, so I can't make that movie. And if that's the movie you want to make, I'm the wrong guy for it.
Yeah.
And my dad has a way of saying, yeah, I got you, kid. But then we're on set.
Yeah.
And he says, we got in some fights. He says, you don't understand because you're not Catholic. I said, but I'm a filmmaker.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting. We got to a place where we understood each other, and I gave him enough of what he wanted, and he gave me the space to create the film that I thought would be more universally accepted.
Right.
And it was. And we took that film, not only just our pilgrimage across Spain to make the film, but we took a pilgrimage across America to sell the film.
Right.
We shrink wrapped the bus with the poster. We did 50 days on the road, sleeping in this bus, traveling in this bus, 35 cities. Took the movie to the people. We'd be in Kansas City, we'd be in the Twin Cities, we'd do on camera, in studio, local news channels, and we did it all. And we did it for free. And I think at the end of the day, we're now, to your point, starting to reap those dividends.
Yeah.
However, when I come to something like a Comic-Con or C2E2, and it's like, they want to pay you for being here, and it's like, it feels, there's just something about it that feels, I'm struggling for the word.
No, I get, this is the central conflict, I think, of your career. We've been alluding to the whole time.
I didn't get in this business to be famous or to be rich.
Yeah.
I didn't care about either.
Yeah.
I just didn't care.
Yeah.
And I would, I'm driving across the country as I did. I took 4.5 days to get here. I'm driving through this farmland. I'm thinking, I could be a farmer. I could be a farmer. There's, of course, the weather, and okay, well, what are the comps? It's like to Hollywood versus being a farmer. It's like, okay, you're dependent on the weather, you're dependent on the studio.
Yeah.
You're dependent on your crops, being healthy and, raising them to where you can get them to market. Well, it's the same thing with a movie.
Yeah.
Right? You script and. But by the same token, there's something really kind of, and maybe I'm just romanticizing it, but because I'm sure every farmer would tell you it's a hard life, and it is, and I know that. I grow enough of my own food to know that. But I don't know, I'm all over the place here, but I think that I didn't do it for money.
Right.
I didn't do it for the fame. I didn't do it for recognition.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it was so uncomfortable to come to these things and be recognized. In my opinion, there's no movie, there's no crops, there's no bushel of corn to sort of put to market. There's no film to screen, and we can have a Q&A about it after the fact and talk about what we just saw. This is just, commerce. And the commerce part of it, the business part of show business, is something that I've never been comfortable with.
But it's interesting. I mean, look, as we wrap up, thinking about the macro of your career, talking about your dad and this infamously, this man who has made his life as much about social justice as the art.
Without question.
And you've truly carried on that legacy. If you look at the films that you're directing, it must, I'm sure he loves his entire family, all his children, but to see you specifically carry on that kind of legacy through your film work and what you've prioritized in your life, that's meaningful. That's it is, and I think that the old joke is, well, they'll bury you with all of your movies, right?
And so congratulations for that. But I think that a lot of people say, and whether it's true for them or not, I can't answer. But people say, your family's most important. Your family is what we do. Your family, you do this for your kids. But think about every obituary you've ever read. Where does the family come? Last, at the very end. It's like he is survived by. Right. That's it.
Yeah.
It's your body of work. It's your accomplishments first.
Yeah.
And then your family. So, do we really believe that,
right.
or have we left it to the writers of the obituaries to determine that what our legacy ultimately is? And so, I believe that the work that I leave behind is the most important thing I do.
Yeah.
When I work on a house, if I build a house, I'm not building it with materials that I don't think are going to outlast me. Sometimes they're more expensive. Sometimes they take more time to work with. But I'm thinking this place will still be here 50 years from now. The building that I rehabbed in Cincinnati is already 150 years old. What we've done to it to rehab it, I think will preserve it for another 150 years.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking along those lines, that these are the sort of films, whether it's The Breakfast Club or The Public or The Way, that continue to inspire long after I'm gone. And that's at the top of the obit. Along probably with Brat Packer, unfortunately.
It's
no
FREEJACK. Just
inevitable.
leave the FREEJACK out of the obit. We don't need that.
Thank you. Will you write my obit?
Yeah,
right.
I got you. We're going to end with this: the happy, sad, confused, profoundly random questions. A little bit more random stuff for you. Are you a dog or a cat guy?
Dog. Yeah. Currently don't have one.
Right.
Currently on the hunt.
I'm trying to will that into existence for you.
And it may be a pit bull. After all is said and done, it may be.
Or
a pit bull mix.
Yeah, that's ours. That's ours.
Jackie was wondering if you were going to bring yours today.
I would have if I could have.
Yeah.
I'll bring her to set.
Okay, good.
What do you collect, if anything?
Dust. Unfortunately. I used to collect art, but then I have a mixed feelings about collecting art. I don't think art should be personally owned and not shared with the public. Almost like a film. It's like, okay, you're going to make this movie and then you're going to keep it in your house and no one's ever going to see it. But I do like having pieces on the wall that are stories that are reflected in a single frame, because 24 frames per second, 10,000 feet of film to tell, that's what I need to tell a story.
Yeah.
That an artist, a painter, fine artist can do it in one frame on a piece of canvas, which is how we project most film, how we used to anyway, is extraordinary to me. So I have an appreciation for art, and I used to collect it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you ever a video game guy back in the arcade day?
No.
No favorite video game?
No favorite video game.
We'll pass on that one.
No.
What's the wallpaper on your phone? The background on your phone screen?
It's a picture of my girlfriend. And a ham-on leg.
Fair enough. Last actor you were mistaken for?
Michael J. Fox. and Michael Douglas. And who else was I mistaken
All
for?
over the place, yeah.
Charlie Sheen.
There's some genetic linkage there. We can excuse that one.
Right.
What's the worst note a director has ever given you?
Have a good fucking time. Screaming at the top of his lungs. Oh, here's looking at you, Joel Schumacher.
Oh no. St.
Awful.
St. Elmo's Fire?
Yeah. So to go from John Hughes, who was collaborative, who was a mentor in many ways, who was calm, listened, to Joel, who was wildly insecure.
Oh no.
And was a nightmare on set.
No kidding.
And was a bully. And to have that happen in the same year and I vowed never to speak to my actors that way if I ever got a chance to direct. In 1984, I thought, this is the best lesson a young actor who wants to direct could ever get. Thank you, Joel.
What a shame. It's funny because I've heard those stories also in relation to like the Batman film he directed with Val, and you hear about Val, and now this colors my thinking of there might have been two to tango to
there
make
may
that.
Have been.
Yeah.
There may have been. Joel may have met his match with Val. I don't know.
In the spirit of happy, sad, confused, who's an actor that always makes you happy? You see them on screen, you're immediately happier.
Gosh, who do I love that? I like John Hamm.
Yeah.
I love John. I'll watch John, and I love watching him host Saturday Night Live, which he just did again.
Yeah.
He's so he's just painfully handsome, and yet he's also wonderfully self-effacing.
Yeah.
And hilarious, and doesn't pull any stops when it comes to poking fun at himself.
Yeah, doesn't take himself too seriously.
No,
on
so
30
I
Rock, he was
adore him.
epic. I remember.
Hilarious.
Yeah. A movie that makes you sad?
God. Sad. Huh. I mean, I cry over commercials sometimes. I will watch commercials and just start weeping. Like, why am I crying over this commercial? It was during COVID.
Yeah.
But
you go, I mean, from a classic like It's a Wonderful Life to like Terms of Endearment to a Pixar movie to a Cinema Paradiso comes up. I don't know.
What have I cried at recently? Can you remember something we've watched and I start weeping at? Yeah, a movie. Oh shit. Yeah, I can't watch The Way and not cry. It's who made this movie?
Why are you doing this to me?
Movie? Why?
And finally,
it's so weird.
That's bizarre.
And it happened at every single screening.
Yeah.
We would do these screens that, again, well, like I said, we took that movie out on the road, and there's the first couple of cuts. I screened it for a bunch of Pepperdine students, and I'm sitting in the back. These are college students, and they're like enjoying it. And the opening credits, I'm just like weeping.
Love it.
I hope that doesn't sound too self-serving.
No. And finally, most importantly, a food that makes you confused. You don't get it. Why do people eat that?
Oh my God. There are some foods, I guess we can call them restaurants, in Koreatown, in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
There was one where there was cotton candy with frozen yogurt and Lucky Charms in it.
No.
This exists.
No.
And I thought, why? What drug was taken to get to that place where you said, this is a good idea?
Yeah. Feels like Stephen King on Maximum Overdrive came up
Totally.
with that one.
Totally
What
does.
if we had this?
Exactly. That is so funny.
Man, I so appreciate the trust you put in me for both that amazing panel yesterday, which was a true moment in time to be a small part of. Was amazing, and to have this kind of conversation is really meaningful. You've meant a lot to my film love over the years, and if we can help 1% make some of these passion projects happen, I'll be a happy guy.
Thank you, man.
We've got a green light. Well, Young Guns, we're going to make it happen.
Guns 3 is going to happen.
That will definitely happen, but let's not leave out the Mighty Ducks or even Maximum Overdrive. I'm here for all of it.
Yeah, and as silly as Maximum Overdrive is and was, Maximum 2 is not. It's cool. It's so cool.
Would you want to direct that one?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because why not?
Why not?
Why not just heap on more?
It feels like you're in a really cool place where like you have found a way to kind of like reckon with the past and the kind of like things that maybe scarred you in some ways as a young actor and didn't feel fulfilling creatively. It's really good to see you now.
I'm embracing it rather than saying, hey man, that's not me anymore.
Turn it into a good.
I kind of have to embrace sort of what's happening in our business.
Yeah.
And you can push back all you like, but at the end of the day, the wave is going to take you under.
Totally.
And so I've got to figure out how to surf.
You're riding the wave,
right,
exactly. You're making it your own.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for the time today.
Thank you.
A real
I appreciate
pleasure.
it. Thank you, man.
Thanks, Emilio.
All right.
And so ends another edition of Happy, Sad, Confused. Remember to review, rate, and subscribe to this show on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm a big podcast person. I'm Daisy Ridley, and I definitely wasn't pressured to do this by Josh.